However, now going out, we saw them as a co-headline with Stone Temple Pilots not too long ago, now going out as a special guest to Greta Van Fleet, continuing to build their following and their career here in the U.S. while we wait for a new Rival Sons record, which, we had Jay on from the band a couple times they were working on, but they take their time and they do it in an old school way, which is one of the things I love about them. So we'll see, hopefully get that record sometime next year. Monsters of Rock cruise is coming February 9 through 14, and they announced some new bands joining the cruise. I'm sure they might be announcing a few bands coming off of it as well because of what I told you earlier about COVID issues across the board. Some of the international stuff is challenging for some. There are still some U.S. bands that still just simply don't want to go out. But Monsters of Rock cruise has announced some additional bands to the sailing for February 9 through 14 on their own. However, now going out, we saw them as a co-headline with Stone Temple Pilots not too long ago, now going out as a special guest to Greta Van Fleet. In the late 80s had to be called the London Choir Boys due to some legality stuff. But they're just a fantastic, real old school rock and roll band. So they have been added and they've been on the cruise before. And Spike, the lead singer of the Choir Boys, we've been in touch and they put out a 30th anniversary edition of their debut album, A Little Bit of What You Fancy. And they are, we're going to get Spike on at some point in the next month or two to talk about the band. I've never done, to my knowledge or memory, I've never done an interview with him. I've met him a couple times on the cruise, but I watched him last time they played on the cruise a couple years ago. And I was just like, damn, that's just a good, real rock band. Kind of like, Black Crowes sort of vibe, Old Faces, Rod Stewart vibe. Really, really good, though. 100% real. And have been doing it for a really long time. Back in the early days of the Choir Boys, I first got hip to them because Phil Mogg of UFO, his nephew was in the band. And for a brief time, Phil was managing them at a time when he could barely manage himself. So, that could be a story in and of itself. But anyway, they've been added to the cruise. Also, Soto, featuring Jeff Scott Soto, added to the cruise, and a band called Stop Stop. So, cruise is on target, and it was sold out. However, there may be a few cabins now available if you want to try to jump on that. And, of course, it didn't happen last year because of COVID. It is on track for this year. We are seeing music-based cruises go out and go out successfully. Chris Jericho's cruise went out without a hitch. Very recently, the Kiss cruise just returned, and so far so good as far as any sort of fallout from that. So that's all good signs for the cruising industry trying to recover, which got decimated because of COVID and is gradually recovering. And it's good to see the music cruises starting to come back as well because they work on a different business model. They have to sail pretty much too close to capacity for it to make sense for those things to happen. And it's good to see that that is happening. Now, if you are going on any of these music cruises, be sure to check all the details on what you need to do in order to get on them and get off them. Because just like shows, just like anything else, there are different mandates in place depending upon the event, whether it's mandatory vax, whether it's negative test on or off. Whatever the case may be prepared and know going in so there's no surprises when you get there what the requirements are. And if you're not willing to meet the requirements or you can't meet the requirements, you have to know that and adjust accordingly. But I just traveled internationally for the first time a couple weeks ago for 80s in the Sand in and out of Cancun. And the mandate there was negative COVID test to get in and negative COVID test to get out. So you had to be tested at the resort in order to get to the plane, and you had to be show negative within 48 hours to get in. Sometimes it's mandatory vax, which I believe a lot of the cruises are. So you just have to check so you're not surprised, not turned away. You're prepared for what's required. And if you're not willing to do that or you can't do that, then you have to make your plans accordingly. So the cruise is online and adding bands and ready to sail on February 9th. And if all goes well, not only will I be hosting it again, but we'll be able to broadcast from it again as we've done in the past.